Myth and legend have been an important part of culture since the beginning. Literature began with these stories. They explained the world that people lived in, provided lessons about behavior and consequences, and entertained as well. Fantasy opens the door to experiencing the magic that is not only within the world around us, but also in ourselves. Encompassing a whirlwind of images and plot twists, fantasy is one of the few genres in which the same book can be comfortably read by an adult and a 12-year-old. Fantasy fiction incorporates the presence of magic and supernatural elements. While fantasy may share many characteristics with science fiction, what ultimately distinguishes fantasy scenarios is that they are not scientifically feasible, even in a distant future. Fantasy is characterized by intricate world building and is set in a different world, which can be in the past or the present, as well as on Earth or in an out-of-time place. By and large, fantasy worlds are populated by mythical creatures, such as dragons, unicorns, and elves, and paranormal creatures such as vampires, werewolves, and shifters. Storylines often revolve around a battle between good and evil, and fantasy novels normally conclude with the defeat of the antagonist. The protagonist often possesses a magical ability that helps him or her in triumphing over evil. In recent times, the term fantasy, when regarded as part of an individual genre, generally brings to mind tales of dragons, elves, and dwarves, and castles and knights in shining armor. But in truth, the genre as a whole encompasses so much more. Examples of subgenres include romance fantasy, fairy tales, alternative history, Arthurian fantasy, comic fantasy, dark fantasy, epic fantasy, fairy tales and mythology, heroic fantasy, high fantasy, mystery fantasy, magic realism, modern fantasy, sword and sorcery. Perhaps the two most popular fantasy subgenres at this point are high or epic fantasy and urban fantasy. Let's take a look at high or epic fantasy works. Such works are set in a secondary world and have a complex and sweeping plot. Narrative usually involves detailed world building, warfare, the rise and fall of kingdoms, and a much larger cast of characters than traditional fantasy books. Setting is often redolent of medieval Europe. Writers like J.R.R. Tolkien, George R.R. Martin, and Robert Jordan have given us great epic fantasy works. Because of George R.R. Martin's series, A Song of Ice and Fire, the genre has gained in popularity in the last few years, with a tendency toward the dark and gritty. A celebrated recent title in that vein is Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. If you are a fantasy fiction junkie and wondering what to read next, pick up a book called The Tale of the Wulks by V.K. Green. This book surely has the potential to hit the big screen, so start reading this fantastic epic fantasy books and let the good times roll. The Tale of the Wulks tells the epic tale of 15-year-old Rilk, his friends, an honorable dragon prince, and other warriors who take on the destruction of evil to preserve life and peace on Earth. Beginning with an adventure to find the magical blade of Anglar, property of the former Dragon Lord, Rilk and his group are pulled into more and more conflicts that undermine the stability of society, from gaining the support of other magical beings to fighting Al-Qaeda with the help of the CIA and the President of the United States. Rilk also has to contend with an uncomfortable friendship and the threat of great personal loss. As an autistic person, Rilk is unsure how to proceed in some circumstances, but is better able to control his emotions to focus on the goal, increasing his powers and abilities to face a conflict that is truly life or death. The Tale of the Wulks is a story that incorporates many different themes. The action is exciting, and the plot unfolds with strong characters and a worthy goal, saving the Earth from destruction. Vivid descriptions and wonderful imagination create a world, real and magical, that grabs and holds your attention, causing you to laugh, cry, cringe, and cheer for Rilk and his group of friends. Interestingly, the author of this book is an autistic college freshman at the University of San Francisco majoring in history. He has performed at a high academic level with advanced diction, language, and social skills. Green is aware how society misunderstands those who have this condition and has decided to use fictional storytelling to demonstrate the reality of what autism is and what those who have it are capable of achieving. Says book reviewer Selena Quadro.
V.K. Green wants this story to help illuminate how autistic people perceive the world, and to explain that autism just makes one think differently than other people, just like having blue eyes or red hair makes one different from others with green eyes or brown hair. There are sentences peppered throughout the story that explain how an autistic person perceives conversation, affection, order, and the like that I found very interesting and enlightening. There's also a character in the story that puts down Wulk a lot because he is autistic, and it is a unique chance for a reader like me to see reasons why an autistic person would let such a thing continue. Coupled with the beautiful and inspiring book cover, B.K. Green's unique circumstances make The Tale of the Wulks, a remarkable man on a remarkable journey, an excellent and enlightening read for children in the 8 to 12 age range. I would also recommend it to all readers who want insight on a section of our society who rarely share their unique point of view.
Melinda Hills for Reader's Favorite.
I'm giving this a 4 rating because it is a relatively good story and represents a tremendous amount of work.
Selena Quadro for www.bookideas.com.
The Tale of the Wulks is an action-packed fantasy that 8-year-olds to 12-year-old readers will find hard to put down. There are many characters to commit to, but more importantly, there are many densely detailed fight scenes that either display the skill of a 10-foot armored dragon or the growing skills of an extraordinary teenage Wulk. Wulk is a Wulk and not human, but close enough to human that kids will find themselves rooting for him and hoping he succeeds. Readers who love action and adventure will find a lot of it packed into this dense, hard-to-put-down book. The amount of detail the author puts in a fight sequence makes it so visually dense one could almost act it out.
Diane Donovan for Midwest Book Review.
50 chapters in 3 parts show that The Tale of the Wulks is no casual affair, but a powerfully complex creation, as it provides a story of evil let loose on the world and the efforts of humans and magical forces to thwart it. But that's not the remarkable thing about this saga. What is truly notable is that this detailed, winding story was written by a teenager with autism, and its hero, Rilke Wulk, is the 15-year-old with autism himself. He is on the side of good forces as they battle evil, and in Green's scenario, autism is actually one of his assets, as he uses his special abilities and perceptions to best advantage. It's evident from the story's depth, consistency, and details that Green has read a lot of Tolkien and other epic writers, and has not only absorbed these tales, but put them to good use.